There's no doubt that the last few seasons of Ed, Edd and Eddy have their share of critics, myself included back in 2019, but mainly because I was getting fatigued by the show. It stayed about the same for its first 9 years, but innovated very little, the school setting and digital get-down in Season 5 attracting some detractors. I'm honestly really happy with the latter though. It made the show less grounded, but opened up the door for weirder and sillier sequences. But re-reviewing Season 5 at large isn't why I'm here today. I just want to review its last episode, and what very well could have been the series finale, A Fistful of Ed. This wasn't the first time Cartoon Network's Three Stooges faced a premature death. It's said the show was almost cancelled at Season 4 with Take This Ed and Shove It, and I'm sure we all know the last 3 Ed, Edd and Eddy projects that aired after Season 5. The CN Invaded special, a single episode 6th season, and the big picture show that completely validated the show's nearly 11-year run. But before all that, A Fistful of Ed was touted in advertisements as the series finale, and aired at the end of a Best Day Edda marathon. How differently would the show be remembered had it ended here? Well, I went back and thought about it. Would have ended on a high note for titles, this is one I can remember. But about the story, we kick off at the school, always a good sign of meh, where Double D's overseeing a chicken egg club. Things are going well until the cankers swoop in, and in the midst of a scuffle, Double D drops a book on Lee's foot. And the needless cartoon violence doesn't stop there. While reaching for pencils the following morning, he kicks Rolf and pins him to a locker with pencil projectiles, slaps Johnny at the cafeteria, and even gets into a scuffle with Ed. With any other character, this would be an average day at the old joint, but since this is kind-hearted pacifist Double D we're talking, the reactions are rather different. His fellow classmates go from respecting him, to an extent, to hushed and distant, then getting worried, and finally flat out terrified. And the action we see is the action they see, only the worst of the heat of the moment. The only one who doesn't get scared of him is Eddy, who sees it as an opportunity to make the school theirs. Really, Eddy stays in his cartoon world through the whole episode, except for the Ed incident, which even he thinks is too far.
Maybe a little rough on Ed, huh? He is our pal, you know.
I have my piece on this, just you wait. Later in the botany room, Double D's left all alone with a flower he's working on, and his thoughts of turning into a monster. But then he finds Jimmy, who sees how beautiful his flower is, so listens in on Double D's side of the story. It was all a bunch of clumsy accidents and wild misconceptions. Whether the kids were blind or just believing in Double D's transformation for the sake of excitement is left up in the air. Likely the former, but I wouldn't put the latter past them. I'm a bit on the fence on Double D lamenting over his supposed transformation while looking at his hands here, if that's the case. If he knows it was just a bunch of innocent misunderstandings, why would he lament here? Well, you're not given much time to think about that because Jimmy whips out a plan to restore his meek reputation. This is the direction I'm liking. We all know Jimmy's gotten manipulative over the years, and seeing him using that to help out one of the Eds is a nice twist. But I think it could have been more dramatic, more in line with the angle the story was going in. They duke it out in the pit for a bit, with the plan being that Jimmy comes out on top. Then Eddy starts throwing hot dogs at him, which ends up taking him off and sending him into a frenzy anyway. I don't know if this wrinkle needed to be here, Jimmy would have won anyway, and we still would have gotten this conversational ending. Ed, Edd and Eddy absolutely despises hugging and learning though, so while Double D's back in Ed's good graces, everything around that resolution feels cynical. Story recap over. It's a finely told story for this show. But my question is, what did they want me to feel? Was it their goal to make me stop and think about the show in some way? Or did it just want to shock me in different ways? I think there's something in A Fistful of Ed that wanted to take the show's approach to slapstick way more seriously, and approach it from a more sensitive perspective. For me, the episode peaks in the botany room where after all this time, we get to see how the slapstick personally affects at least one of the characters. But then the slapstick goes back to being a tool just like any other. The discussion they start isn't given much of a conclusion. Say they made an episode discussing how a character feels about the wacky sound effects, but then goes back to using them regularly by the third act anyway. There's a lot of potential that they only use a bit of. I guess if there's one thing you can always count on with Eddy and Eddy, it's some very high energy physical comedy. Even the worst episodes never willingly waste your time and always scour the scene for the next way to make you laugh, whether it be through props or blatant callbacks.
Jimmy looks like he's gonna blow up! Oh wait, he already did when we turned him into a sumo wrestler! Remember?
I got a wiggly in my belly button! Get it out! Get it out!
And despite being more somber than usual, A Fistful of Ed has some very creative bits and pieces. I especially like Eddy twisting Ed's eye like a dial to turn down his voice, and speaking of which, despite being the heart of the story, Ed still always has entertaining stuff to say and do. He can really bounce off Double G as well.
So, little Double G, seeing as my old pal Double D is now a nasty McDuster Knuckles, you are going to be my new friend. What would you like to do today?
And I have to say, great shot composition for the scenes with action in them. They really sell that feel the episode's going for and make you wonder if Double D's all that he's cracked up to be. For all my feelings about the story, I think most of the characters were handled well. I like Ed and Double D in this, I like Rolf and Johnny in this, Kevin, Naz, Sally and the Kankers are all in character. However, some of your enjoyment for this episode may come at the cost of how you like Eddy and Jimmy in the later seasons. As I've said, I liked Jimmy, but Eddy's gotten very OTT now, and despite them trying to give him some funny things to say, it just feels like disconnected levity most of the time. I know all the Eds are in every episode, but perhaps they could have mattered more to this story and been more in line with what the show staff was trying to accomplish. So, while it's clear what they set out to do, how would Ed, Edd and Eddy be remembered today had this actually been the last episode ever? That's something impossible to determine, but if I had to guess, not as fondly, but fans would focus on other things to love about the show. Think about it, had this high-octane, relentless cartoon wrapped up with a serious, slow half-hour special, I bet people would appreciate that it got us to care about these characters enough and get sucked in by the action enough to get to this point where we question how well they match. This is fairly well known for a season 5 episode, so I'd never accuse it of being the episode that killed the series, but it can finally make the viewer stop and assess the situation. But at the end of the day, I'm happy that they didn't stop here, and they kept searching for the right image to end the franchise with. It's a pretty important thing to do the longer a show runs, and I'm very surprised a show like Ed, Edd and Eddy, for just a brief period, took the time to stop and smell the cross-pollinated roses with baby blue gym socks. Goodbye for now.
There! Is everybody happy? Good!